Okay, thank you. Good afternoon to all of you. I'm really glad to be here. It's just over 6 years since I was on a stage, so if I'm a little bit rusty, please forgive me, okay? We'll make it through in some case. Anyway, so today I want to talk about the gel polish revolution. There's been enormous changes in the nail industry during the last 20 years. If we just think about the number of brands, perhaps there were a few hundred 20 years ago within Europe. Today there's probably over 1,000, maybe even 2,000. If we also look at the education, and if we look at the number of allergies. Back when I started my first nail salon in 2006, allergies were pretty rare. If somebody developed an allergy, a nail technician developed an allergy, then usually they'd been working in the business for at least 10 to 20 years. And back in those days, there was no real education about allergy risk. In fact, one of my surprises when I started my nail salon was looking at the safety data sheets and looking at all the warnings that even you can read on the back of the product labels, okay? And I thought, this is a cosmetic, and they're giving all these warnings. Now, I'm an engineer, so I always think a little bit about these things. And it occurred to me, the reason they give the warnings is because there is a real risk, and they don't want to be sued in court if you harm yourself, okay? So this got me really interested in nail product chemistry, the safety of ingredients, and also trying to prevent allergies. And this has been a journey that I've been on really since 2006. It's led me to actually developing my own business and creating my own safer hypoallergenic products. And in fact, my company was the first in Europe to develop a hypoallergenic nail gel back in 2011. So this has been a passion of mine for many years. Now, what I'd like to talk to you about in this presentation is not only the gel polish revolution, but also how that is connected to all the other changes we're seeing in the industry in the last 20 years, okay? And I've got some concerns because we're seeing things in the last years we never saw before. We're seeing really widespread allergy outbreaks. Even worse, we're seeing nail salon clients develop allergies. 20 years ago, I never heard of that at all, okay? But now it's relatively common, and there's a reason for it. And because of that, the authorities are getting interested in the nail industry, and they're starting to restrict ingredients. And if we don't, as an industry, do something about this, it's entirely possible that in 10 years, so many important ingredients will be banned that we won't have nail salons anymore. Okay? So, what I'd like to do is, first of all, just give you a quick overview about me, because I'm going to give you a lot of information that you perhaps haven't heard before. And then you should always question the credibility of the person giving you the information, right? Because there's a lot of nonsense spoken out there, especially on social media. So, as you can see, my background is that I'm an engineer. I was an engineer for 35 years. I opened companies in the UK and in Sweden and in America, and I supplied some of the world's biggest companies with electronic solutions. And I moved to Sweden to work with the industry there, especially the car industry. And while I was there, I was able to start a nail salon along this road. As you can see here, I not only was a nail salon owner, I also founded a magazine called Imagination. This was the first international nail art magazine, and back in those days of 2006, 2007, Russian style nail art, which is so common today, was rarely known. And I was able to bring in some of the best educators from East Europe and put together a magazine which actually taught the techniques and acted as a bridge, if you like, between the East and the West. So that, again, was the kind of first step into educating a wider audience. Okay? But I realized that it wasn't enough. The problem with running a magazine is that you somehow have to be able to promote this. And I had a lot of resistance from existing nail magazines in the market. They saw the kind of articles we were publishing, the tutorials and the quality of work we were presenting, and actually they didn't want to advertise, they didn't want to promote us in any kind of way, although we did get a couple of offers to buy the magazine over the years. So I looked for a new direction, and what especially stimulated this was that a close friend of mine developed allergies. So although I've had this concern, now I saw it firsthand, and I thought, this really doesn't make sense. We have this industry which is full of women who are providing happiness and beauty and self-confidence to consumers and salon clients all over the world. And yet the producers of the products are taking their health and risking it. And the problem is that once you develop an allergy, there's really no way back. It's permanent. And that means that in most cases, nail technicians lose their careers. And in fact, over the last 6 or 7 years, I would say tens of thousands of nail techs in the US, in Canada, in Europe, have lost their careers. And of course, there's also the home users as well. Many of them have also developed allergies. All of this doesn't help our industry. It makes us look very risky. It puts people off from going into nail salons. They were concerned before about sanitation, but now if you think that you can have beautiful nails, but maybe if you develop onycholysis and your nail plates, your nails lifting off your nails, fingernails, then you're going to think twice about getting artificial nails done. So I decided to create a company, which is IKON.IQ, and to develop our own hypoallergenic nail products. This was a really high-risk thing to do because at that time there were only 2 or 3 other companies in the whole world who were developing hypoallergenic products, and they were mostly in America or South Africa. However, I personally didn't like the products. I didn't find that they were reliable. I didn't like the application. So there was a gap in the market for somebody to create safer products which also had high performance. And by high performance, I mean that they're suitable not only for students, for daily salon use, but also for top competition use. So this kind of level and standard demanded by really experts. So what I'm going to try to show you today are 6 main points. The chemistry of gel polish, we're going to cover that briefly. How the industry created an epidemic, we've touched on that already. Why HEMA-free does not mean free of HEMA. And this is a big scam that's going on right now. People are investing in HEMA-free products, not realizing that they still contain risk, and they may contain HEMA. Okay, I'm going to introduce you to the patch test. If you develop an allergy and you go to a dermatologist, then they are going to put a patch test on you. And there's 80 kind of patches that you have on your back, which are things like nickel and perfume and dog hair and whatever else, okay? But in addition, there'll be a specialized methacrylate patch test, which contains 12 nail product chemicals. And these are the most common chemicals that cause allergies from nail products. The next point I want to explain is what hypoallergenic really means. Again, there's a lot of confusion about the meaning of hypoallergenic, and I don't know why. Hypoallergenic simply means lower allergy risk. Now, if you're going to promote a hypoallergenic cosmetic in the EU, there are specific regulations that you have to meet. And essentially, you have to be able to prove, without reasonable doubt, that the products are safer. And there's a number of ways that you can do that, and I'll explain that in a moment. And finally, we'll talk about developing performance without compromise. There's absolutely no reason at all why products that don't contain aggressive allergens like HEMA should perform any worse. It's all a question of clever chemistry, okay? So, coming back to the point of gel polish, which is a central theme of this entire talk. Back in the early 2000s, we had nail polish, we had gels, we had acrylic, and silk wrap. The problem with gel, acrylic, and silk wrap was it required a level of education. It took time to develop the skills and the abilities to use the materials. Okay. So the other material which was commonly used in nail salons was simple nail polish. But the problem with nail polish, as we all know, is it doesn't last. Okay, it's not strong enough. So the invention of gel polish, what that did was it brought the ideas and the chemistry of gel, made it removable, easily removable using acetone or soaking off, but used the methacrylate chemistry in order to get strength. A gel basically consists of 3 monomers and an oligomer, and a photoinitiator, 3 main components. There's some other things like stabilizers and such like, but that's the main points. And the idea is that when you apply UV light to the gel, the photoinitiator releases something called free radicals. And these free radicals start to combine the monomers and the oligomers. And it makes very long chemical chains. The longer the chain, the stronger it is. Okay, and those are called polymers. And the process is called polymerisation, which is basically the higher part now. Okay? Now, those polymers, together with some other kind of ingredients which are in the gel, create what's called a cross-linked polymer network. And as you can see here, this kind of matrix shape. So if we compare nail polish chemistry, when nail polish consists of these simple chemical chains, which are actually fluid. They're not fixed. And that's why nail polish isn't stable or reliable. That's why it chips, it doesn't last very long. If you compare that with gel polish chemistry, with its matrix, once that polymerization occurs and its matrix is formed, you have a very stable bond. In fact, you could say it's like plastic. It is a form of plastic, like Perspex or any other kind of plastic, okay? And it's irreversible. Let's look back at the history during the last 20 years. So this gel polish revolution started in 2009 when an American company called Harmony introduced this new type of nail product called Gelish. They were the first. It was a soak-off gel in a bottle, like nail polish, that you could easily apply on the nails. It required minimal training. Although having said that, when it was first released, the nail forums were full of questions because they didn't educate properly, okay? Gelish is what we would perhaps call a pure gel. It means that there's no solvent in it, okay? It's just a pure gel, similar to the hard gels we knew from before, but in this case, soak off. The next product to come along a year later was Shellac by C&D. And this is what we would call a hybrid. It essentially was like a combination of gel together with nail polish. Nail polish contains solvents. Okay, that's how you can soak it off. The problem with solvents is they also dry the product out if the top is left off. Okay? But the advantage with shellac is that the removal time was even faster. So instead of maybe 15 minutes with Gelish, with Shellac, you may be looking at 5, 6, 7 minutes, and a very simple removal. However, whereas Gelish lasts 3 or 4 weeks wear time, Shellac typically 2 weeks. So it was really designed for the American market, where salon clients were going back into the salon every 2 weeks. This became enormously popular. It spread across the world like wildfire, this gel polish idea. And in the East, factories noticed that here was a potential consumer market. And it motivated factories in Asia to produce gel polish. But their main focus was not the professional market. It was the mass market. It was consumers. And if you understand that, you can start to understand why certain other things happened further down the line. As a consequence of this, there became a home nail boom, let's say that, consumer boom, okay, in making gel polish nails at home. And this was spurred by the emergence and growth of YouTube, by free education, and products being easily available on Amazon. So in the past, as a professional industry, our products were gate kept. So we had a gate on there, which was the distributors and the brands who wouldn't sell to home users. They wanted to protect their industry, quite rightly, because they understood that they were dealing with chemicals. They understood, although they might not broadcast it, there was risk. And so they wanted to protect the industry and their own reputation. But if you have a factory in the Far East and you can't be sued, then you can have a different attitude to the products that you actually create. And of course, there's no training required. The brands provided videos, the brands provided everything that you would need at home to create your own nails. As a consequence of that, and how it's building up, an allergy crisis emerged. And the first major sign of this actually was even as early as 2012 in Sweden, where I was living at the time. A local distributor who would sell these kind of stick-on nails you find in the pharmacy decided it'd be a very good idea to buy some of these products from Asia and to sell them through the shops. And of course, this became really popular with teenagers. And as a consequence, there were a lot of allergies suddenly appearing. And these teenagers, they tried complaining to the brand and tried to understand what was happening, because they just wanted nails. They didn't want burning nails and nails lifting off and all these other problems you get with allergies. And they weren't getting any help. So they tried complaining to the government authority responsible for cosmetics. They weren't too interested either. They actually don't know very much about the nail industry. And what I've done a lot of over the last 20 years is educating those people about what our industry is doing. And this carried on. Sweden, they're very kind of familiar with social networks and computers, and a number of them started to produce blogs. And eventually, one of the main television channels, the main TV news channel, picked up on this and made a report on primetime news about all these teenagers that bought this product in these cosmetic chains, developing these serious allergies, and that nobody was listening to them. That certainly woke up the government authority. And they pulled the products from the market and they started to investigate it and all those kind of things. But literally hundreds of teenagers developed allergies. And that was the first widespread allergy outbreak due to one specific brand that I'm familiar with, but it wasn't going to be the last. Now, all of a sudden, dermatologists were being contacted, asked for patch tests and for help with these allergies. And this started to create a kind of buzz, a noise, which eventually led to the European Union deciding to restrict some of the ingredients. This was directly asked for by Sweden back in 2012. It actually took them until 2021 to do something about it. And what they did was they decided to restrict two ingredients, which a dermatologist who tested some of these girls decided was the cause. And I'll come back to this point in a moment. And the first one was the ingredient HEMA, and the second was another product called Di-HEMA. Now, HEMA is a monomer, and it has a very small molecule. If you look at the molecular weight, the molecular weight is something like 130, which, take it from me, it's small, okay? And the smaller the molecule, the easier it is to get into the skin. And they found in these products that the brand, the factory, not the brand, the original factory, had put in excessive amounts of HEMA. This meant that it presented a much, much higher risk. Rather than having 1 spoon of sugar in your coffee a day, it's like putting in half a kilo, right? It's that kind of analogy. The stupid thing is that Di-HEMA is actually a very safe ingredient. Its molecular weight is 472. Now, the size of a molecule needed to penetrate the skin is around 500. This means if an ingredient is 472, it's going to struggle to get through the skin, all right? And in fact, Di-HEMA was one of the main ingredients used by every hypoallergenic producing company in the industry because it was considered to be extremely safe. But there's a problem. Di-HEMA is manufactured from HEMA. And if you don't manage that manufacturing process well, then maybe not all the HEMA is used up. If you buy cheap ingredients, maybe it's not the right quality. Now, this dermatologist in Lund University who did these tests, and if you read his report, a normal patch test for Di-HEMA wasn't available because it was never a problem in 30 years of nail industry, right? So he had to make one. So the first question is, how did you make that patch test? How reliable was it? How many people did you test it on? Is it 1 or 2, or is it 100? Yeah, so you got the kind of statistics involved. And in his report, he said, I'm not so sure about this Di-HEMA. I mentioned it, but it could be due to contaminated source, contaminated ingredients that I got. Anyway, the EU, in their wisdom, decided to restrict these two ingredients and make them what's called for professional use only ingredients. So what does that mean? That means that it became illegal to sell products containing these ingredients to consumers, in other words, non-professionals. But here's the funny thing. Within the EU regulations, there's no definition of what a professional is. It doesn't exist. And the reason is because there's no national certification, except in Italy, other than Rome, in the US, okay? So they make a rule which can't really be enforced. But the point is that the nail industry was now getting the attention of the authorities, okay? And then, as most of you will know, last year, TPO, the ingredient TPO was banned, which is a photoinitiator. But that wasn't banned because of allergy risk. It was banned because they fed a lot of rats too much of it and determined that it could be a carcinogen, it could cause cancer. But it's ridiculous because how you use something depends on the risk, right? It's clear. So if you were applying a product containing TPO on top of a nail, and you've got 100 layers of keratin on your nail for it to get through before it comes to the nail bed, how can that be a risk? Keratin evolved to be a protector. And so it's very difficult for nearly any substance to get through keratin. There's one exception, which is acids. And again, we can come back to that later. Okay, so what we have here are the two philosophies of factories in the nail market today. On the left-hand side, we have the traditional professional market model. These are the German, European, British, USA, Japanese factories who were producing products in nail salons. They well understood that if you're going to produce a product which somebody is working with, perhaps 6 clients a day, in America maybe 8 clients a day, 5 days a week, 320 days a year, for years, then the risk has to be low because allergies happen due to exposure. And an allergy is an overexposure. It means that you've had skin contact of uncured or undercured product too many times on the skin, and it's got into the skin and caused the allergy. So the factories in, let's say, the West and Japan, deliberately, when they used HEMA, they used a low amount. Of course, most of the people using the products were also educated. They wore gloves. Perhaps not 30 years ago, or even 20 years ago, but more and more. And they followed the legal requirements of each country. So they were careful that certain ingredients, only legal cosmetic ingredients were used. Let me put it like that, okay? I'll give you an example. So in the back of the European cosmetic regulations, there's an Appendix 4, which is called colorants. And this is a list of 500 different colorants, pigments, which are permitted for use in cosmetics. And not all cosmetics, because the cosmetics you apply under the eye, where the skin is very tender and very thin, or on the lips, has a higher standard of safety than what you'd put on a nail, okay? So the professional factories were very conscious of that. They followed the regulations and produced safer products. But on the other side, coming out of other areas in Asia, they had a low cost OEM consumer focus. In other words, they were focusing specifically on providing products which other brands would white label. Okay? They had a different type of customer in mind, an untrained customer. Now, if you're not trained in the application of an artificial nail product, in order for that to wear more than a few days or a week or two, you need to have extremely high adhesion because your nail preparation isn't going to be good. The foundation that you're preparing on the nail plate isn't going to be clean enough or free of oil or moisture, or maybe the cuticle hasn't been removed correctly. So in order to overcome that, you can use excessive amounts of high-risk ingredients like HEMA, okay? And that's exactly what they did. So by doing that, they produced products which had a very high allergy risk, but with the assumption that the user at home would maybe apply the nails once or twice a month. They wouldn't be working with it 8 times a day for 20 years, okay? Okay, so the home nail boom, no training required, and the education came from YouTube, TikTok tutorials, easy access was available through Amazon, even pharmacies now very easy to obtain. Many home users are applying it, as I said earlier, every week, and there's no professional oversight. There's no control of it. Okay, so every revolution has consequences. What's happened is that the risk of a HEMA allergy has increased 9 times. 80 to 93% of all patients who are tested by dermatologists are positive to HEMA. HEMA is the #1 nail product allergen worldwide. Okay? And of those that are tested who are nail technicians, a report in a study in Denmark found that between 20 and 50% of them lost their career. They could no longer work. Now, here I've got a list of different ingredients underneath. You see here is the top one. But there's others like HPMA, hydroxypropylmethacrylate, which is also pretty high. In an Israeli study, it was in some cases very close to HEMA actually. And then we have ethyl cyanoacrylate. So it's not just HEMA is the risk. That's why there's 12 ingredients in that test. It's actually another 20, I would say. Also, careful one. Before 2009, acrylate allergies were mostly confined to industrial use and dental technicians. It was rare for nail technicians to develop allergies. After 2009, and with the introduction of gel polish, that changed rapidly. Nearly all of the allergy tests that dermatologists do are either home users or professional nail technicians. And this in itself shows you the before and after of gel polish and the before and after of professional products correctly formulated for safety. And nail products coming from high adhesion, high allergens. And that's the reason why we're seeing so many allergies, and this is proven in reports and studies, okay? I think you all know this, but I'll go through it for the point of completeness, and I'm looking at you, Diana, especially. I know you know this. Okay, how does an allergy occur? The monomer, or the acrylate, the methacrylate, was on the skin, and because its molecular size is lower than 500, it can penetrate the skin barrier, the stratum corneum. Okay. When it gets through the skin, it meets up with a protein and it combines. And it creates something called a haptin. Okay? And if you imagine, a haptin is like a foreigner. Okay? It's like a foreigner, it's like an invader. And something called the Hans cell detects this. And it says, hold on, what are you doing? And it takes this to the lymph node. And the lymph node says, okay, I've got to protect the body. So it starts to produce something called T cells. So when you have any kind of infection, T cells are created to help to protect you, right? So now it's fighting. This is the army coming to fight off the invaders. Once this happens, the allergy to that specific ingredient is irreversible. It's for life. Your immune system will always know that you've developed an allergy to HEMA or HPMA or whatever the other ingredient is, okay? And it will trigger even 20 years later. if you expose your body to that ingredient again. Right. So coming back to HEMA, the reason the industry chose it from the beginning, because HEMA has been used since the dawn of time in gels and in acrylic, gel polish, polygel now, was that it provides exceptional adhesion at a low price. Okay, so it was a natural reason to choose it. As I explained to you before, it became a problem because of molecule size. Here they're calling it Daltons, but you can also call it molecular weight or MOL. Was small enough to break through the skin barrier. And as I said before, the reason that budget brands, low-cost product factories choose it is because you can get the maximum kind of adhesion so that good nail preparation and training isn't needed in order to get nails that wear. Okay. It's only possible to develop an allergy if there is repeated skin contact of uncured or undercured products. Once a product is cured, like plastic, it's benign, it's not going to do anything to harm you, okay? So curing is not only essential for reliability for the nails to wear and last a long time, it's also essential in order to remove the risk and to combine all the ingredients together and lock them, okay, so you don't get skin contact. Now, how is it possible for so many people to get allergies and get this repeated skin contact? And let me just veer off over here to a little bit of a tangent. I told you before that back when I started my nail salon, nail technicians typically, it took them 10 to 20 years to develop allergies. And now, it can take weeks. Okay, so how does this uncured product get on the skin? Of course, it can just be a messy application. Somebody's using a brush and they're getting the gel polish or the gel around the cuticle area on the side walls of the nail. It can be that. It can be dirty brushes with gel on. I've seen this in different nail salons. Working in an unclean way, okay? Putting your arm in monomer, yeah? But I suspect, and it's not proven because nobody's going to do the research on this in a serious professional way, and it's impossible to prove actually, but I suspect the main cause is undercuring due to the use of the wrong UV lamp. Now, I don't know why it is, but UV lamps have been in the industry for at least 30 years, and they're still the most misunderstood tool. So many nail technicians just use whatever lamp is cheap. They use one lamp with multiple gel brands, and the consequence is the products are not curing. Now, if the product isn't curing, how can that cause an allergy? Two ways. The first way is that if you soak off the product with acetone, you are going to release, as it breaks down that gel polish or that gel, it's going to release those unused ingredients, those HEMA, HPMA, whatever it is, even photoinitiator. And that's going to go into the acetone. Where's the acetone going to go? It may be sitting on top of the gel polish, but it's also flooded around the skin of the nail, okay? And it's sitting there maybe for 15 minutes. The second way is if you file off undercured product, that nail dust is also going to be reactive, okay? And what is less known in the industry, unfortunately, is there's two types, I would say two types of nail dust, okay? There's visible, which everybody worries about, and you buy a dust collector, okay, because you want to keep it clean. But that's not really the dangerous stuff. Because if you inhale through your nose, the nasal passages will trap it, yeah? So What you need to be more concerned about is the invisible nail dust, which floats in the air and lands on your exposed skin, which is why you can get allergies under the eyes. Okay. I've been told to hurry up, so I'll try and whiz through the last slides. When it's HEMA-free, not free of HEMA, if you look at most of the, let's say, HEMA-free products that have come out into the market during the last 2 years, because of this restriction to HEMA from the regulations, the main ingredient is something called acrylates copolymer. And acrylates copolymer is not a really defined ingredient. If you say HEMA, it's clear what the molecular structure of HEMA is, right? Acrylates copolymer simply means that a number of different ingredients have been combined to create this copolymer. And here's the problem. Those ingredients can include HEMA. And if you have acrylates copolymer up to 60% in your gel polish, 30% of that can be HEMA, which is loosely bound to these other ingredients, and it's not on the label. And that's why, if you develop an allergy to HEMA, and then you say, okay, I'll just go and use a HEMA-free product, you may react. So they're cheating you. It's not a safer product. Okay? It's just the ingredients are hidden. In fact, if you look at all the low-cost factories out there, there's only 5 or 6 formulations. They all sell to each other. They sell a big bucket of clear gel polish, and they have essentially a big food mixer, and they throw in pigments. They're not a real factory. They're a mixer. The factories that actually produce gel formula, there's only 5 or 6 in the Asian area we're talking about. Okay? Okay, we've talked about exposure, the patch test. I mentioned that there are 12 different ingredients. You can research this online or contact me if you want the list. As a consequence of these low-cost products, it meant that the cost of entry to develop your own nail brand dropped like a stone. Back in the 2009s, 10s, when I first started thinking about a brand and creating my company, I would say it would probably cost you between 50 and 80,000 euro to just buy the products and the packaging to have a reasonable brand. Why? Because a color gel will cost you 400 euro for 4 liters, and the factory's only sold in bulk. 100 colors? 40,000. You need 10,000 jars and bottles of every size, because the factories won't supply less. Okay? You then need a warehouse. Okay? You got to pay for the labeling. So only serious professionals even considered creating a brand prior to the introduction of gel polish and the introduction of cheap factories. Today, you can buy gel polish, 1 liter, in Asia, $19. Compare that to Europe, 120 to 160 euro. Shocking, isn't it? It's really shocking. So for a couple of $1,000, free website, you can buy 100 colors, take the photographs, start to sell. The brand owner may never have been educated by a really professional brand. They don't know anything about allergies. They don't have enough money to hire an expert, and they don't know there's a risk anyway. And you've got people selling chemical products in this industry which are not fit for purpose, and they're damaging our professional industry. I think here's the main things that we can all do to try to improve our industry. If you want to copy the slides, I'll be very happy to provide them. Just come up, give me a card, and I'll whiz them to you. Okay? The main thing is we've got to keep the education going. You've got to educate your clients. You've got to educate yourselves. Make sure you're using a lamp which is correctly matched to the product. Okay? All right, I'm going to wrap up now because. Oh, she's talking about. Okay, I'll be fast tomorrow then. All right. So, take care of yourselves. Make sure you use the correct UV lamp. Always overcure. It doesn't hurt to have a longer curing time. Once all those ingredients are used up, it's going to stop anyway. You just try and light it plastic. It doesn't care. Okay? There's no risk. So, also bear in mind that the brightness of the UV lamp will decrease over time. That's another good reason to cure for longer. Okay? So, I think I'm done. Thanks for your attention. Thank you very much for the opportunity to do this. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for your attention. It really means a lot. And do take care of yourselves. If you have any questions, you can always contact me. Jump onto our TikTok and our Instagram channels. I'm doing more. My darling wife has persuaded me to get into the modern world and to do more and more social media videos, which it's not something I'm too happy about, but I'm doing it, and there's a lot of information available to you for free. Okay?
Thank you very much, Robert Giblett.
Very welcome. Thank you. Thank you.